Go.
Hello everybody, my name is Andy Sallnow and I'm from Prostate Cancer UK, and it's my privilege to interview Gareth today about his upcoming challenge and why he chose to choose Prostate Cancer UK as a charity to benefit. So let me start, Gareth, by asking you, for anyone who hasn't seen any of your videos in the past, what is the challenge that you're taking on?
So yeah, I live in Monmouth in southeast Wales, and there's a local beauty spot which is called the Cymin, which is a big hill basically that overlooks the town. So from the top you've got lovely views down to the town, across the Wye Valley, out as far as the Black Mountains and the Brecon Beacons. The hill is 800 feet or so above sea level, the top. There's a little round house at the top that used to be part of something called the Cymin Club, which is a gentleman's club where they used to go and eat nice meals and play cards and drink whiskey and so on. And there's also a naval temple at the top there, which was visited by Lord Nelson and Lady Hamilton back in the day. But anyway, in April, I'm going to endeavour to run up it 37 times, which is the equivalent of the height of Everest. It's quite well known in running terms around these parts, because there's a race every year that my running club, Spirit of Monmouth, that I'm a member of, have called the Cymin Dash, which is a pretty tough race, which goes up it once. But obviously I'm not going to be going quite as quick as the people trying to win that race, but 37 times, in order for it to count as an official Everesting, as it were, then I have to do it without any sleep as well. So it's going to be a pretty tough day out.
And tell me, how many people have Everested running so far globally?
Last time I checked, there's about 6,000 cyclists. It started as a cycling thing, and only 322 runners, of which I found one record of someone doing it in Wales, on Penifan, which you can just about see actually from the top of the Cymin, which is probably the highest peak in South Wales.
And you're clearly someone incredibly well motivated. This is going to be an amazing challenge you've got ahead of you, 37 times up. What's the reason you chose Prostate Cancer UK as being the charity to benefit from all of the sweat, all of the hard work that you're clearly going to be putting into this?
Yeah, a little while, a year or two ago, my father was diagnosed with prostate cancer, advanced prostate cancer, so it's not going to be curable, unfortunately. And I felt it was a good opportunity to use the motivation that would give me to do some good and hopefully improve things for people in the future. I think one of the things that really hit home for me is that, as my dad has it now, my chances are 1 in 3 of getting it myself. And if I get it, then my 2 sons have the same risk of 1 in 3. And I think that there's probably some pretty big improvements that can be made in terms of people getting themselves tested and having tests which predict these things properly and so on. Dad had a test done probably 5 years before his diagnosis, which was absolutely clear. And then the nature of his disease was so aggressive that by the time he next had a test after some pain in his hip, which he attributed to a wearing out hip replacement, which is entirely reasonable, because it would be about the time that the hip replacement would be due to wear out. An X-ray revealed that the pain in the hip was actually due to spreading to the hip bone, and that's been my big motivation in trying to kind of improve things for people in the future.
And what a powerful way to pay tribute to what your dad's going through at the moment, to be doing this. And I should add that the situation that your dad's in is sadly really common. So for everyone watching this, prostate cancer it kills over 11,500 men every year. And just what you were saying, Gareth, in terms of making sure that men are diagnosed at the right time, it really is crucial, because the earlier that men can be diagnosed, the more treatable the prostate cancer is. And the problem with prostate cancer is that often when the cancer is still within the prostate, there are no symptoms. And so we're used to, in life, going to the doctor if you've got a symptom. Like, you're a dentist. Typically, there might be some people who go into the dentist if they've got no symptoms or anything. I'm sure there's a bigger camp of people who will only go in if they really are having a painful time of a tooth. And that's the problem we're finding.
I think certainly we encourage people to come more often, because
if you're watching this, please do go to your dentist at least every 6 months or a year. Let's be clear.
But there's things that we see that quite often we're having conversations with people that you've got some early gum disease, for example, and people might not notice any problems there, and then but at least there's signs that we can see. It's not very easy to look at your prostate.
That's absolutely right. And the other element that's really tricky about prostate cancer that might not be obvious to those people who haven't had experience of it is that the test that you mentioned is that you mentioned your dad had is the PSA test. So it's a test that you can just a blood test that you can test at any point in someone's life. What we recommend at Prostate Cancer UK is that, just as you mentioned, if you're increased risk, so if you have a family member who has had prostate cancer, either your dad or your brother or your uncle, granddad, then recognizing your increased risk of prostate cancer. Also, if you're over 50, recognizing that that creates an increased risk, or if you're Black. So all those things, if you have family history, if you're Black, or if you're over 50, those things are the three elements that we'd say that are the equivalent of, as you said, just thinking that you should be going to a dentist, having that regular checkup. And just as you say, the first thing when someone goes to a doctor, it's a very straightforward test that they'll give, and then it's a question of then follow-up tests after that. So anyone watching this video doesn't need to be worried about what might happen. And even in coronavirus times, we still recommend men chat to their GPs, because at the moment we're seeing patient referrals just over Zoom like this, or over the phone. So it really doesn't need to be something that you need to necessarily go into the GP surgery for straight away. And I think the message that you're putting out is an amazing one, because you've already had lots of conversation with men about prostate cancer throughout since you started the thought of the challenge, haven't you?
Yeah, I've, certainly. I think one of the videos we put out with a friend of mine, Phil, who's had some treatment over the last year, that's really hit home with a lot of people. Had messages from family members who I haven't seen for years, saying that they've sent their one lady saying she'd sent her husband off for a test, and various other people. Had a conversation with a couple of patients today who are now going to go and get themselves tested. So that's a really good first step. And like you say, Andy, it is straightforward. I because my risk is high and Dad's disease is so aggressive. I had a test last year. His consultant actually recommended I go for an annual test, because Dad's his previous test was clear, and then by the time the next one was done, it was almost too late. So I had a test last year. It took longer to pick the phone up and make the phone call to make the appointment, to be honest, than it took to have it done. It was a 2-minute blood test, and that was it. And the thing is, now that my GP it was all clear, my GP now has a baseline level to look at. So I need to make that phone call again now, because it was just after Christmas last year that I had the last one done, and go and get it done again, and then they can look and see if there's been any change in the last year. Hopefully not, but if you don't try, you don't know, do you?
Absolutely. And every man you've spoken to who has then had the thought of, actually, I should go and chat to my GP, that could be another life saved. And so everyone watching this video, just by knowing if you're at increased risk of prostate cancer, having the conversation with your GP. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that all of the work you're doing to raise awareness of prostate cancer, you're also doing a huge amount in fundraising. And the funds that you're raising will be going towards us getting a better test, so that we are able to then have this global screening program, so that on whatever age it might be, we all just get tested, and we're told at that point, this is either the prostate cancer that you have that needs to be treated, or you don't have prostate cancer, don't worry about it. And I think that's going to make it a lot clearer than working with the current situation. And the other thing that your money will be going towards is making sure that we can get better treatments. So what we know at the moment is that if the prostate cancer has gone outside the prostate, then it is a question of slowing that cancer rather than being able to cure it. But at the moment, we're working on more and more treatments to make sure that we either do less harm, and so we can then extend someone's life without the same side effects, or protract their life even further. And so it's an amazing thing you're doing, and it will have a huge impact, not only to the men in this generation, but in future generations.
That's huge, isn't it? It's the kind of thing, if we can get that test, I think that's probably that's the big one, isn't it? I think there's been a lot about testing and things in the news in the last year for other more virus-related things, but it shows what can be done. And I think there's obviously screenings for things like cervical cancer and breast cancer, and I think maybe part of the reason that works so well is that there are predictable tests and predictable ways of doing these things. But yeah, a proper test that can be done that is predictable and gives good results as close to 100% of the time as possible, there's got to be the golden ticket, I reckon.
Absolutely, and that's what we're excited about. I think that's what both the Prostate Cancer UK, everyone who supports Prostate Cancer UK, the global community of people who recognise the importance of saving men's lives to prostate cancer, that's what everyone's most excited about. And at the moment, lots of the projects we're funding are looking at other elements that can be discerned in the blood. So it's still a blood test, that would be more accurate at being able to understand exactly whether that man has prostate cancer, and if so, what treatment they might need to take, and at what stage it's advancing even. So there's a huge amount of excitement, but it's just a question of us trying to have, like you are doing at the moment, as much support as we can to make sure that we are investing in this, what's a global community. The researchers in prostate cancer help across nations, across the Atlantic, to make sure that we're building on one another's discoveries. And once we get there, it's going to be a question of us being able to look back at all the people who supported this challenge, all the people who donated, and everyone, when that new day dawns and there's a hopefully front page for positive reasons rather than some of the front page we're seeing at the moment, you test and diagnose prostate cancer, we're all going to feel like we had that connection into how that happened. So it's an incredibly proud thing that you're doing, and one that I'm sure will test you physically, mentally, but it's going to be something that's going to be a real moment when your parents, your mum and dad, are going to be there at the top, hopefully at the end when you finish this as well.
Yeah, hopefully, and hopefully restrictions are going to be lifted slightly to allow various friends to come and help with as running supporters. I know my two sons are hoping to do a little bit, and they're not old enough to do it all, and hopefully my wife will be there at the top, and my sister and her little girl are going to be joining in for a little bit as well. My sister's quite a keen runner, and yeah, her daughter and my youngest son will probably can't run a whole Kim in, but they can do a little bit, so we can kind of choose the flat a bit nearer the top perhaps, and they can come and join in for that. But it's going to be tough. I'm going to have to run all night. It's not going to be easy. I think I've kind of joked in the past that I've been on a bit of a mission to find out where my limits are, and this could be it. It might be that I don't manage it, but all the motivation I'm getting from the kind donations, I mean, up to nearly £2,500 already. Had a patient in today, he's a good friend of mine, and he's offered me £1 a rep, so it could be £37 there, which and those are things you can draw on, I think, when the going gets tough and it's dark, and hopefully the weather's better than today, because that'd be pretty miserable. But yeah, just being able to kind of see there's kind of certain points where you can kind of look up as you're going up the road, and you can see there's a certain point when you've got you may be 3/4 of the way up, and if you look up to the right, you can see the roundhouse at the top, which is a bit of a beacon up there. Hoping to persuade the National Trust that they'll let us have the lights on, so it's floodlit for the night, so that we can see it and see where we're going. But yeah, all that motivation, people supporting me, and when I've done things in the past, people sending messages, and various people who aren't runners have said, well, they're going to come along and just kind of appear on the hill at some point and give me a wave, and a few words of encouragement. All that makes a huge difference.
Well, I'm definitely one of those people watching you, perhaps from afar, I suppose, perhaps a couple of hundred miles, but I'm definitely watching you on social media. And Gareth, I've got absolutely no doubt that moment is going to come when you've pushed through the darkest times, you've gone through your limit, you've found that you're capable of everything you thought you were. And more than that, you've inspired lots and lots of people, me being one of them. So I'm really grateful for everything you've done already and all that you're going to do in this epic challenge that you've got ahead of you. I should finish by saying that if anyone has got any questions about prostate cancer, please go to prostatecanceruk.org, and you'll find information there to find out all of the elements that we've spoken about in terms of diagnosis, treatment. You also can chat to one of our specialist nurses on the phone or in live chat. So please do that if this conversation has brought up anything that you think you'd like to get more information about. But in the meantime, thank you, Gareth. And it's been such a privilege to spend the time. I look forward to seeing you soon. And
yeah, hopefully we can keep working towards that test and those better treatments, like you say. That make a huge difference in a lot of people's lives, I think.
Brilliant. Cheers, Gareth.
Thanks.